It's May 20th, 2024. Good evening. I'm with John Jeckovich, a decorated World War II veteran, and we're reading his book, Their Mother's Son, that was written approximately 24 years ago, and it's about 900 pages. Today we're on chapter 17, page 487, and the chapter 17 is titled, News of Rene's Tragic Death. Before I start reading, what was your dog tag number?
What's wrong? What?
Your dog tag number.
4209-2965.
Before I start reading the news of Rene's tragic death, did you want to summarize somebody?
Well,
Did you want to summarize the chapter, or you want me to just start reading? You want me to just start reading, or you have something to
let's
say?
start reading it, yeah.
The news of Rene's tragic death. I talked a little about Anne, Jean, and Rene, but only in a casual, non-depth manner, and she did not pursue it any further. I never brought her home to meet Mother, and I would never think of suggesting it. Phyllis hinted at times about it, and I would ignore her inquiries, and after a while she did not bring it up again. I would listen to her and talk about her parents and her older brother and her younger sister, and I would become piqued as she referred to them in a glowing terms. Again, I noted a great diversity and disparity in my own family, and wondered why some families were more fortunate than others in this respect. I would come away with the same reaction after listening to Anne, Jean, and Rene talking about their families, also when the Army and listening to Post, Lape, and others talking about theirs. When Phyllis left at the end of the summer, I felt as if I was losing a dear friend, and I missed her for the longest time. I had gotten so used to her being around that I almost forgot what it was like to be left alone again. So wished that I'd be more resourceful and resolute in my desire to attend, and resolute in my desire
His desire to what?
I so wished that I would be more resourceful and resolute in my desire to attend school, for I knew now that it was the life I was desperately seeking. Phyllis made that abundantly clear to me, but I am afraid I was too late for me, along with everything I had to contend with at home. I had spent my first Christmas at home since returning from the service, and it was no different than when I left 4 years ago. Granted, it was less stressful than my last Christmas and the Arnays, but I would never giving anything to revert to that former. I would have given anything to revert to that former status. It was during this Christmas period that I received some disturbing and heartbreaking news directly related to Rene. The radio and newspapers were commenting about the fight in the French Indochina and how the Vietnamese were committing atrocities against civilians and missionaries. As the day went by, the news became more graphic, and there was also photos in the papers depicting some of the atrocities, showing women and children, even missionaries, being shot and tortured. It was not until this specifically mentioned Haiphong I knew something dreadful had happened to Rene. I could feel in my entire being, I sensed that I had lost her, and I felt indirectly responsible for her death. I should have been more forceful in our relationship, and perhaps she would be alive today. I was distraught at the news, and the event would affect me for a long period, perhaps the rest of my life. I did not tell anyone my great sorrow, but just mourned silently and grieved for everything I had once again lost. I would recall the many times we were together and how I anticipated her and found her great joy in being with her. I did not expect this to happen, and only thinking that she would have a fruitful and joyful life doing whatever she so much desired. I wanted to know more of her last days, and I contacted our State Department to seek more information. Their only response was it was a national French incident, and I should contact the French embassy.
Well, what was the girl she ran with? What happened to the girl?
You said to contact the French embassy because you suspect Rene was killed in the overseas.
Yeah.
Rene, okay?
And that was it.
The United States Embassy told you to contact the French embassy. Of course, they were not much help either, as I was not a French citizen. I was finally left with my own memory of Rene and agonizing over what the tragic end must have been for her, far from her homeland. Steve was home for the holidays, which only added to my emotional upheaval. He was the last person I wanted to see after this traumatic ordeal with Rene. Of course, I did not mention anything about Rene. It was of no interest to him. Besides, he would only revert to his mannerisms, which would only antagonize me, and I was in no mood for that. He was impressed that I had a car, and shortly thereafter asked if he could use it to see his friends. So your brother found out you had a new car and during Christmas, and he asked if he could use it to visit his friend.
My car.
Yeah.
Which brother, Steve?
Yeah. He would bring Jimmy Duncan over quite often, something I could never do, and Mother would seem pleased to fix them dinner or even a snack. Steve felt perfectly comfortable in this setting, and I wondered how we could manage it, since I would have a difficult time dealing with it. I would say only a few words to Jimmy Duncan, as he seemed to brush me aside and continue his conversation with Steve, laughing and joking all the while. I then left them feeling that I was intruding. Holidays were always difficult for me for some reason. I could never get into the spirit of them. I was only relieved to a certain degree when I had children on the way. What made it worse was when Steve would bring his family to Mother on at least 2 or 3 holidays during the year. Looky never brought anyone home. They would honk their horn, and when they arrived at the house, he would scamper out to their car. He never talked about his friends or what he did, and never volunteered any information. As time went on, our meager relationship only solidified and deteriorated until we talked less and less. It was like having a stranger in the midst. I perceived his presence, but that was all. This bothered me at times, especially when I had no one to relate to, but I imagine it did not affect him at the least. There were pangs of relief of the holidays were over with. Steve went back to school, and there were only Mother and Sally to contend with. Looky was never around, and when he was, he would sulk and bemoan every little thing until he would get up and leave to join his friends. I also felt tremendous letdown at holidays, as I missed something special and wonderful, something I would never recapture. Everyone at work would be talking about their holiday experience, how drunk they got, how many presents they received, who they saw, and in general, what a great time. I would listen and note the great discrepancy in my own holiday experience. It was obvious I was not doing or feeling the things which were normal in my immediate environment, normal for what I was seeing and hearing in everyday life for people around me. Some of it discarded and the drinking and bar frequency, but there was a sizable chunk which I could not, in good conscience, throw aside. The companionship, and understanding the warmth displayed were sensations I felt strongly while in the Army, but somehow were never conceived or manifest in my present surroundings. I did not approach him on his behavior, but I was getting tired and a bit peeved. After picking him up, 1 second, Sam, I gotta talk to her. Hi, hamster. How you doing? So what's your plans now? Who'd you see?